Councillor Denning is sprinting round to her chair, which is good. I'd like to deal with the apologies first. Have we got any apologies?
No apologies.
No apologies. I've got the minutes of the 7th of February. I'll find those as a true record. Read. Declarations of interest, if people can advise of declarations of interest at the appropriate time. We've got the local government access. There are no part 2 items. And we've got the public questions, and there are no public questions. And before we go into item 6, I'd like to make a bit of an announcement. Not many of you would have known, but most of the people within the Labour Party, Democratic Services, and some other people, the Labour Party organiser of some years ago, an election agent, Eddie Lopez, sadly passed away on Saturday morning. He had been ill for some time. Not a complete surprise, we knew, very sad. Eddie was a Labour Party member since the year dot. He's been well active in Exeter. Many people knew him. His campaigning ability was first class, and many of us learned many a lesson from Eddie. Fighting till the end. I went to see him only a week or so ago, and we were recounting stories in the 70s and 80s of what it used to be like, and how we were challenging things. On a personal note, we will be sending our regards to Brenda and Vanessa, his daughter, and the family. It's not just a loss to the Labour Party, I think. It's a big loss to democracy in Exeter and how he campaigned. A very fair man, very politically sound. So, good old Eddie. He was a good political advisor, and I always refer to him as my political commissar, and he was very good on keeping me on the straight and narrow. But not to worry, everybody else, there's plenty of other people who are there ready to do that for me at my request. So I felt I needed to say that Eddie was a good man. Moving on now to item 6 of the agenda, and this is the appointment of 2 directors to the board of Exeter City Living. And Kareem, so we've got 2 recommendations here, and this is that we note the decision of the Chief Executive and Growth Director under delegated powers to appoint 2 new directors to the board of Exeter City Living. And there's the second recommendation, and I will ask Kareem Hassan to explain those recommendations, why we're doing them and why we need to do them at this stage. Kareem.
Thank you, Leader. So the business is addressing a recommendation of the external auditor, who made one recommendation pertaining to 2 of the directors that were on the board of Exeter Living and a perceived conflict of interest. So those 2 directors stood down from their role on the board, and the interim chair of the board was concerned about our ability to make decisions in terms of being quorate. So the recommendation was that we move quickly to appoint 2 new directors, and the decision that I've taken under reserved matters under the management agreement and the delegated powers in consultation with the leader and deputy leader has been to appoint the 2 people identified in the report, which is one, the operational director of the company, and secondly, the development director of the company, and second is the financial manager for the company, to give them a finance input into the board's considerations. And I've gone ahead and made that decision on delegated powers.
Thank you, Kareem, for that. So, have I got any questions or contributions from any of the leaders? No? Do I have any contributions or questions from any of the members? No? Those are the 2 recommendations. I'll move the recommendations from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you very much, Mark. Item 7 on the agenda is the review of Article 4 direction and houses in multiple occupancy supplementary planning document. We've got the 1 recommendation here. Councillor Morse.
that the executive approves the draft revised Article 4 direction, including the Article 4 area plan attached to Appendix A and the draft revised HMO SPD attached to Appendix B for public consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. And I've got Catherine Smith, Principal Project Manager, who's going to explain why this recommendation is needed and what this report will do for us. Catherine.
Thank you, Councillor Ballack. So the Council's had an Article 4 direction in place since 2010, which restricts PD rights, permitted development rights, from dwellings to houses in multiple occupation, or HMOs. The area covered by the direction was last reviewed in 2014, and it currently relates to parts of wards that are close to the university's 2 campuses. It was introduced by the Council as one strand of its planning policy response to help manage the potential impact of increasing student numbers living in Exeter. The Council has also got an adopted supplementary planning document, or SPD, about HMOs, which sets out how planning applications to convert dwellings to HMOs within the Article 4 area will be assessed. About a year ago, we appointed a consultant to review the Article 4 direction and the SPD. And following some robust work, they have produced a report which is attached as Appendix C to the executive report. And that report reviews and assesses options for the future of the direction and the SPD. It includes a summary of their advantages and disadvantages. Briefly, the options are, first of all, option 1, to make no change to the existing Article 4 area. Option 2 is to expand the Article 4 area to include postcodes with 20% or more student properties, or which are expected to exceed that threshold in the near future, together with postcode sector EX46, which has almost 30% of student properties at the moment. Option 3 is to expand the area to include postcodes with 10% or more student properties. Option 4 is to establish a citywide Article 4 area. And finally, option 5 is to remove the Article 4 area, and I should add that this option has been discounted. Based on the consultant's work, officers have identified option 2, which is to expand the Article 4 area to that 20% threshold, as a preferred option for the future of the direction and the SPD. And the revised direction and map and a revised SPD have been drafted to reflect that preferred option. The executive report is seeking approval from executive to publish the draft revised direction and SPD for public consultation, which would take place between May and July of this year. The timetable for implementing the revised direction and SPD thereafter is set out in the report.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Do I have any questions or comments from the leaders? Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing forward this report. So first of all, I have a question which I'm very happy for you to reply afterwards, but the second point I'd like to make should be something I would hope the committee will consider before it moves to consultation. So the option that is proposed highlights a potential disadvantage in that the relatively small expansion of the area has the potential to reduce the supply of student HMOs, which may impact on rents. And it says that this is uncertain. So is this going to be monitored, the impact? My major point, though, is the preferred option suggests that it will help maintain some balance between student and non-student residents of an area. And the draft document does talk about managing the impact, as we've just heard. However, neither the supplementary planning document nor the Article 4 direction nor policy C1 of the St James neighbourhood plan defines what balance means. We know that in other council areas this is defined, and that is referred to as well within the National Policy Planning Framework. Again, it's not very clearly defined there, but it's defined in relation to affordable housing. And we know from a recent case to the Planning Committee that there was great difficulty because this could not be defined. So it's not set out in the planning documents for the council. So the reasons for the recommendation say the consultation will enable the wider community to inform the two documents as they evolve towards their final versions, and will fulfil statutory requirements and be in accordance with the statement of community involvement. So this is an opportunity now to say what the council means and remove that ambiguity. And this is really important because we really need to understand not only the impact of houses in multiple occupation in an area, in particular the area or an expanded area with the Article 4 direction, but the combined impact of houses of multiple occupation, purpose-built student and future co-living branded accommodation in an area. So without proper definition, the wards in the city centre will be badly let down by the lack of joined up thinking between these policies, and if there's no clarity, then the planning team and the committee will continue to have difficulty in making their decisions.
Right, thank you, Councillor Morse. Any other leaders, or even any other leaders want to say? No? Okay, I'll open up for discussion. Go on, Councillor Parkhurst.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, I'm really welcome this report and commend the hard work of the consultants. It's something I'm really pleased to see, especially being a Pennsylvania ward councillor. One of my first meetings, being a newly elected councillor from last year, was with a very passionate group of residents who had submitted a petition that got this kind of ball rolling and really raise this issue, and I'm sure they'll be really pleased to see this this work continuing and us stick to the timetable that we've previously outlined to them. Yeah, so obviously representing Pennsylvania ward, this is definitely a concern in the ward. A lot of the ward is already within the Article 4, but yeah, extending it will definitely be welcome by a number of residents. And yeah, I just really want to thank the hard work from the planning team as well that's obviously being put into this report. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up from the consultation, and yeah, I'm really pleased to see this. This is really welcome from my point of view. And yeah, thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Parkhurst. Any other councillors want to come in? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Leader. Pennsylvania again. I've spent some time with Councillor Martin Snow out there, and this is something passionate that he feels passionately about as well. And as Councillor Parkhurst has said, the community in that area really pushed for this expansion to be considered. It is out for consultation. The preferred option that we're putting forward is 2. The other options are there to be consulted upon. But I think the important thing is that we've listened to the community, we've heard the impact, disproportionate impact that students can have. It's not that we don't welcome students into our communities, it's a matter of striking the right balance. And I'm really pleased to see option 2 is the preferred option, because it in itself is a balanced perspective looking at it. And hopefully, as Councillor Martin Snow would be keen to see, that that it will achieve the objectives that community we're seeking to achieve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I must say I was really pleased to read the consultants' report. There is so much detail and analysis in there. It is really, really impressive, and I would recommend anybody listening to read it. It'll provide the officers and planning members with detailed information. So whereas before we relied very much on anecdotal data with some of the data, this is such detailed research that it's very, very impressive and going to be very, very important to us for decision making as we go along. So I fully support the recommendation, and I welcome this report and thank the planning team for their excellent decision making in selecting this particular consultancy to do this work, because it's really good, and obviously developing the brief for them. So well done.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to say, as a ward member for the St James, which is one of the areas within the city which has some of the largest numbers of HMOs in it, I'm really pleased to see this policy come forward. It's great that there's been a really thorough and professional review done. There's a great evidence base to back up these recommendations. Because what we've got here in the city is kind of a national housing crisis, but on steroids. It's really pumped up, and it's playing out in a very different way to what it is in other parts of the country, and that's for numerous reasons. One, we're a thriving city. Everybody wants to come and live here. We've got a thriving university, which is expanding at what seems like a never-ending rate. So again, that has positive and negative impact because it reduces the supply of housing for people in this city, and we need to ensure that there is balance remaining, and that there are housing options for students, for other people, other cohorts who wish to live in HMOs, for families, for everybody who wants to come and live in this city. And in spite of all the other good work that the council's doing, we've got one of the largest council house building programmes outside of London. It should be commended on. It's a really ambitious scheme of over 500 houses. But even if we deliver on that, there's more than 500 empty homes right now in this city. So this is kind of one string to our bow when we're going to be trying to fight and bring forward the housing that this city really needs. So I'm really pleased to see the report come forward, the evidence base that's there. Yes, it needs consultation. Yes, it needs to be further refined in certain areas, but this is a fantastic point to start from with that consultation. So I commend everybody who's been involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? I'll come back to you at the end. Okay, before I come to Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Yes, just to echo everything that everyone else has already said. A really good report, lots of detail in there, which is good for those of us that really like the detail, because it's going to be useful in a lot of other areas. But just to say thank you very much for the people of Sylvan Road who invited me to a residents association small talk with them. It seems like ages ago now. Just checked back, it was only July last year, and then Councillor Parkhouse and Snow and Councillor Lights took over with that, but they requested this, and at the time it seemed like it had taken an awful long time for it to be able to happen because of different processes. It's actually come forward relatively quickly in local government wheel turning considerations. It's actually been quite quick, so a really good response to residents. Really, they have really been listened to, and so would like to thank you for that.
Okay, before I bring in the portfolio holder, just to say the recommendation is just to put it out to consultation. We're not amending it or adding stuff to it now. What I suggest to Councillor Moore is all the stuff that you mentioned is valid. Please enter it into the consultation process. We're not doing that here in this meeting. It will come back to us in November, December, and then it will go out. So please go through the proper mechanisms to get that consultation done. We're just going out. There's a preferred option. We don't know what that will look like yet. We've got to listen to what people have got to say. Councillor Morse.
Obviously, I'd start by thanking the officers. There are two reasons for that. They're great at their job, and they've made a really, really good report here in consultation with the consultants. But also, none of us, our memories are that short to know that the original document that went to that executive committee was not to do this because we didn't have the budget to do it. And budget was found, not within my budget, I believe, because I was very iffy about that. But I think the context of that is really important, that this was so important to the residents of Pennsylvania and Derry St James area, but particularly the Sylvan Road area, that we changed our mind and we, found some money somewhere else and did this at a time when really we don't have the budget to be doing these extra pieces of work. And for every time we make those decisions, obviously something somewhere else has to give. So I think it's really important that the officers had no more time to do this in. So whilst they've also been doing your local plan documents, they've been working on the Article 4 direction. So I'm very grateful to those officers that have sort of found the extra bit of time. And actually, as you say, given those factors that we're already going out to consultation feels slightly miraculous. We will go out to consultation after PERDA, and we'll do so in line with the consultation charter. So we'll meet all of those requirements. I think option 2 is my preferred option, obviously, as well, because there are two sides to every story and we can't only look at one of them. So I think this is a good, not even a compromise position, I think it's a good position for the residents of that area. But realistically, we need something that will be adopted, and I think probably an all Exeter one wouldn't make it that far. So thank you once again to the officers, and I look forward to hearing the outcomes of the consultation.
Okay, thank you. I'll move the recommendation from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour?
unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you, Mark. Move on now to item 8, which is the council consultation response to the proposed submission version of the Teambridge local plan. And here we have the one recommendation, Councillor Morse.
Switch off the computer for a second. Getting distracted. It's a really long document at the end of the last item. Keep going. Yeah, still going. No, I just read this. Put on the screen, I'll read it. Thank you. That the executive gives delegated authority to the Director of City Development, in consultation with the council leader and portfolio holder of City Development, to prepare and submit a response to the consultation on the proposed submission version of the Teambridge local plan based on the issues raised in this report.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to ask George Marshall first, the Assistant Service Lead of the local plan, to introduce the paper. George.
Thank you, Leader. So a bit of an explanation in addition to the recommendation. So just like the City Council is doing, Teambridge District Council is working on a local plan for their district, which will cover the period up to 2040. Teambridge have been working on their plan for a number of years, and they're currently consulting on their final draft version of their plan, which is known as the Regulation 19. So this is the final version of the document before it's submitted to the Planning Inspectorate. So this consultation is the final version in which we can submit formal consultation responses. One of the key components of Teambridge's plan is to accommodate the housing requirements of the district, some 741 per annum. And a key part of how they do that is their proposed development strategy, which is looking at brownfield sites. And where that isn't possible, it's to locate development close to existing facilities, jobs in significant settlements. Within the district, that would be Newton Abbot, for example, but also in relation to Exeter. That reduces the need to travel, has impacts in terms of net zero and various other considerations. That principle is understood, but there are some site-specific considerations which we need to take account of, and that's where some of our proposed comments come in. So there are 3 sites of particular interest which Teambridge are consulting on at this stage that are on the edge of the city area. One is known as Peamore and Westex, which is a residential and employment proposed allocation. Another one is known as Atwell's Farm, close to Exwick, which is a residential proposal. And then there's a further mixed-use proposal known as Markham Village, close to Alphington, close to Ede and Shillingford Abbot. So previously we've set out support for the Peamore proposals because of the links to existing infrastructure provision which are currently being made in the area, and also because of the employment provision which would be proposed, which would complement Marsh Barton. But there are significant concerns relating to the other 2 proposed allocations which I've mentioned, at Atwell's Farm and at Markham Village. And these are for a combination of landscape, transport and infrastructure reasons. And we will draw upon those reasons in more detail when we formally prepare the response based on some of the elements set out here. I think it's important to note what the council is doing within Exeter in terms of our emerging plan and our emerging development strategy, which is having a significant focus on brownfield sites, as set out within the emerging Exeter plan, working off the basis of our starting point within our core strategy. And that's been driven through the Livable Exeter initiative and a significant emphasis on brownfield development to achieve net zero and to reduce the need to travel, and also to protect our valuable landscape setting. So although that is a consideration for Exeter, those aspirations extend into our neighbouring areas and adjacencies, and therefore it's relevant to raise those issues when thinking about one of our neighbouring authorities and their development strategy. Hence the concerns that we've raised about two particular allocations. So the recommendation is to prepare a response to the Teambridge local plan based on these key issues relating to Atwos Farm and Markham Village, based on considerations about landscape, transport and infrastructure provision. And then we would take that forward as Teambridge's local plan progresses and represent those views at a forthcoming examination.
Thank you. I'm first going to go to any of the leaders wish to make a comment or ask a question. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, George. I do think it's right that the council reject the proposed sites at Markham Village and Atwos Farm, because these are not going to be sustainable developments, because they're going to be bounded by a major road and they will be car-led developments. So they will lack the focus that is required to create communities rather than just housing estates. So I support these reasons for recommendation. However, the report doesn't go far enough. It doesn't mention the fact that this is developing on important agricultural land. I am surprised at the position that the council has taken on Peamore and West X, because I understand, I haven't done the calculations, but these sites altogether make up 40% of the sites proposed for Teambridge. So, but we also do need to look deeper at some of these sites. So the Peamore site, if you look at that proposal, it talks about having a potential high impact on the Exeter air quality management area. It is remote from local services and facilities, and it is going to require substantial investment to create paths for walking, wheeling and cycling, as it asserts can be done. So the Teambridge documentation says that major roads surrounding the site provide natural barriers to the expansion of Exeter, and breaching these would have landscape implications. I think we can do better than create communities which were bolt on to the city. But they will look to the city for their amenity, but they will feel out of reach, not least because these so-called natural barriers will mean that they will become car-led developments. And we should also note, actually, that the £50 million grant mentioned in the report is invested primarily in junctions and roads for vehicle traffic, and we aren't going to be fobbed off by Devon County Council building so-called carbon neutral roads. So these developments are wholly adequate for the southwest of Exeter in terms of actually providing sustainable transport options. And what we'll be doing is creating more generations of children that are going to be ferried around the back of a car seat. So I would ask the council to go further in its recommendation, in its reasons for rejection. I know that the duty to cooperate has had a poor reputation for its effectiveness, but it is disappointing that it's got to this stage and the development of the local plan that Exeter has to make such representations now. And I would urge both Exeter City Council and Teambridge to sit down to have a very detailed conversation about the inevitable extensions to southwest Exeter, and have those discussions in a coherent way about how it joins up with the current southwest Exeter allocation and indeed to Exeter itself.
Okay, thank you.
Just to say, please put that in as a submission, because you know it's not our plan. Please put that in as yours as a councillor's submission to Teambridge. It's not us doing it, by the way. We'll put the submission in, so you must put your submission in to Teambridge, who will most probably, just as I'm putting in a personal one to Teambridge, which I'm entitled to, and I would suggest that's what you do. Now we've got, if there's no other leaders to speak, we've got, so I really do want to stick to the recommendation if I at all can. We've got Councillor Yvonne Atkinson for Alvington wanting to speak under Standing Order 44. Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you, Phil. I'm going to be talking about the two settlements, proposed settlements in the Teambridge plan at Markham Farm and Peamore, principally Markham. I do not believe that Teignbridge District Council should solve its housing market needs assessments by having a housing strategy which dumps new developments onto South West Exeter and Alphington in particular. As you know, they were already in the process of building 2,000 houses on Alphington's boundaries, just over it, with a net increase in traffic movements already coming down Chudley Road and Dawlish Road. We are still working through those issues that these new developments have created. In the past, I know that planners, highways planners, have been had difficulties in turning down developments, and that in order to turn them down, they have to demonstrate that there will be a severe impact caused by new car movements on the existing road network, and that there are safety concerns. I believe there are safety concerns, but I do believe that the new approach, and that George can tell me differently here, is that we have a vision and then you validate that vision. And the new vision is to try and look at the site and see how we can create a sustainable community on that site, which is supported by new and sustainable modes of transport. I think here that that approach is going to fail for those reasons, and that what we will end up with, as Councillor Moore has said, is people getting in their cars. And I'm going to elaborate on why I think that we can't just have that vision and hope that people will be encouraged to use sustainable transport modes and leave their cars at home, because I don't believe the current proposals have existing safe pedestrian and cycling and public transport infrastructure built into this vision. And therefore they will be driving their cars down the two routes which all go through Alphington in this plan, the first being Ede Lane on to Alphington Road, and the other one being Markham Lane onto Shillingford Road. The site is, in my view, not suitable for suitable modes of transport approach. You know, for instance, let's look at Ede Lane. How are you going to encourage walking and cycling across the A30 from that site? Round that roundabout. Existing, there's a public footpath from Alphington, which you're probably familiar with, which ends at the end of Ede Lane, straight onto that roundabout. I know, because you can't cross there. You have to go down to Alphington Cross subway and then go across that way. So how are we going to encourage residents of that Markham Lane on the other side of that roundabout to send their children to school across that roundabout? The second access is down Markham Lane to Shillingford Road. You know, there is a new development in Shillingford Road already planned, which is within our boundaries, which is going to be coming to planning at some time in the near future. In that, they will be providing pavements on some of that along the Shillingford Road. There are no other pavements along this road, and it's not wide enough for a separate cycle route. It's also very steep, and it's not suitable for ordinary cyclists. You know, coming up from the double roundabout at Shillingford Road, you'd need to be a fit mammal, I think, to get up there, back and there regularly. And so, again, for safety reasons, it's not amenable for sustainable transport modes. Will a new bus service be provided? We know that the current system for providing bus services is you bung in the Section 106 agreement, a couple of £100,000 from the developer to put towards a bus route. And when that pedestrians with no pavement, where the children are going to school, or will it go down that Ede Lane roundabout, down Alphington Road that way? And we know that if the money runs out and it's not viable because there's only 900 houses there, they'll be left with either taking their life in their own hands and cycling and walking, or getting in their cars. And, you know, they won't be able to look to the county council to subsidise that, because the Conservatives have taken away 72% of the council's funding. So, you know, it's going to be up against it. Also, let's look at Exeter. We've got the development, Tilia Homes, as I said, in Shillingford Road, and we know there are some houses there currently under discussion, roughly around 120, and they've been approved to coming out onto Shillingford Road. But we've said we will not allow them to build on the other fields that they want to build on until there's an access route onto Chudley Road. So you've only got, we'll say 120, maybe 150 can go on to Chillingford Road. What's being proposed in this development is up to a further £900 houses and residents with cars can go on to Chillingford Road. So I think it's against our own policies if this goes ahead, because we've limited through our planning decisions the amount of traffic can go onto Shillingford Road. So we can't really have, proper cooperation, have Teambridge District Council encouraging it in more than we were being prepared to do. So, I mean, there is perhaps another alternative that they could put a slip road onto the A30 above Chillingford Abbott Markham Lane, so that traffic could be diverted onto the A30 at that point. But as I understand it, none of that is being proposed. You'll also be aware that the local cycling and walking improvement plan is out with a proposed E15 cycle route from the new developments in southwest Exeter. This does not link up to this new site. There is no link in the E16 route across the other side of the A30 along the Balls Farm Road, which links up to this site. So at the moment, there is no sustainable infrastructure to support this development. Also, I don't think it's sustainable as a freestanding development, and it's going to be parasitic on Alphington to be sustainable. There isn't going to be enough funding, despite what it says, for a new school, I am told. It's the size of the community is not big enough. So all the children that live there will either be going to West Ex School across that dangerous roundabout, or to Alphington down the dangerous Shillingford Road, a school which is already oversubscribed, or down Shillingford Road to get the new Matford Brook through school. Other facilities will need to make it a standalone sustainable community, such as GP surgeries, extra care housing and affordable housing. And we know the more the developers are asked to fund infrastructure like these safe routes for driving, cycling and walking, they will just take that off any affordable housing. So I understand that Teambridge District Councils have been set high housing targets by the government, but their haste to have new build housing, in their haste to build new housing, housing shouldn't trump other factors such as having proper infrastructure in place. Developers should not be allowed to build to make a profit and then leave it to existing communities in Alphington, possibly Eden elsewhere, to clean up the mess and to struggle to improve the infrastructure and find new funding if that's possible for new infrastructure to be built at public expense after they've built and taken their profits. The government may need to change the planning laws to ensure infrastructure is provided for before any development goes ahead. But I think we need to make it clear that Alphington shouldn't bear the cost, and this is not a sustainable development. I also think it's not acceptable for landscape reasons. This is up a hill and is going to be visible from Exeter and Alphington. So for all these reasons, I would ask the council put these kind of submissions that I've made in our response to the Teambridge local plan. I will make my own submissions as has been suggested. So moving on to PMOR, as we said, new settlements in a local plan need to be near locations that are close to facilities, jobs and services. Whilst that Markham site is not, the other site at PMOR is, I have less reservations about that because it has greater links to southwest Exeter, and there is more chance of that becoming a sustainable community. There is work there, and there is a closer proximity to the through school at Matford Brook. I understand that there has been some talk, and it's still hoped that the slip road will be built onto the A38. meaning that less traffic will eventually go through Alphington. And I hope that this plan can be taken forward as part of the PMOR development. I understand it's also proposed to have a realistic new transport hub to be provided there, and that there will be links to the cycling and walking infrastructure plan going forward. So I think on this side there are better transport traffic infrastructure and landscaping reasons to accept it, but there is concern in Alphington still about the impact that this will have on the village going through Alphington Road and possibly Dawlish Road, and whether residents will drive there to access the Spa or the Lidl or Sainsbury's. And I think if this development goes ahead, we must make sure that Teambridge do make it a sustainable development with shops and community services, which mean that it doesn't have to drive through Alphington to access all of those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atkinson. And I know you say you're going to put your response in, and I gave you the latitude and time because this is not the planning meeting for Teambridge, and I get that. Those are important issues for the people of Alphington. 824 of the document, 82 and 820, the plan preparation evidence, and what they're talking about, the statement of common ground is very important, and I feel sure that the team will look at the strategic things as what we're looking at. So I'm going to open it up now for discussion. We are not determining the planning application for Markham Village or Atwell's Farm or anything at the moment. These are important strategic issues. I understand about the infrastructure, and those comments will be made. And if we can fit any of those in, Councillor Atkinson, if you want to share that with George Marshall, if it's appropriate, fits in with how we're looking at it, because we look at it in a different way. And I look forward to hearing your submission at a forthcoming planning committee meeting if this site goes forward. So do I have anybody who wants to speak on this? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. It's a question, please, if I can, to the officers. Oh, my apologies, right next to me. So I can see from the report that we made a response to the previous consultation in 2021, where we expressed the same concerns. So just looking at the joint statement from ground, reading about the legal duty to cooperate that we have. Can you tell us how that went in mid-2021? If you raised the same concerns then, what was the response?
We'll come back to that one at the end, George. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to recognise the level of detailed knowledge that Councillor Atkinson has brought to this meeting as an example of being a great champion for the community she represents. I have to say the issues that are raised within this at a strategic level are mirrored on my side of the city as well. And the Pinhoe, like Alphington, is kind of at the limit on its own. And these bolt-on communities, they're not. The issue is that the sustainability of those communities is just non-existent. The impact it has on local resources and the ongoing impact on travel and transport options, it just overwhelms that side of the city, and our city is at capacity. It's just really frustrating that at a partnership level, the councils don't interact. Who knows, maybe we could have a greater Exeter strategic plan or something where we all work together. Never would take off, of course.
Thank you. Anybody else? And before Councillor Morse comes in and then followed by George, just to say, I think what Councillor Atkinson has drawn to our attention about the transport, the lack of facilities and the infrastructure required is so important. That applies equally to Exwick. That's why we're trying to defend the boundary of Exeter, the green space, the amenity space on the boundary of Exeter. That's why livable Exeter, we need to go in a certain direction. It all adds up, and that's what we're trying to defend. We need to defend our green space on the borders of Exeter, and it's very right to bring that attention. And of course, traffic is not getting any easier. So actually, I'll take the questions, and I'll let you sum up at the end. You want to come in? Okay, Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just want to say I'm really pleased that Teambridge are pushing ahead with their local plan, and they're not adopting the policy of some of the up to 33 local authorities, largely conservative-run ones, it must be noted, who've paused and stopped any consultation on a local plan due to this government we're saddled with currently, suggesting they're going to rip up all the housing target numbers. So, they must be commended for that and pushing on regardless, because this government could last days or weeks and then the framework changes again. But it is to be noted with disappointment that their solutions seem to be to become a parasite to the city of Exeter. We all love Exeter. It's a great place to live. It's thriving, but it needs to be sustainably developed. And these plans that they're proposing are certainly not going to be sustainable and are going to have a negative impact on our great city. So I think one thing that this item coming to the committee tonight is probably going to do is increase massively the number of submissions to their consultation process, because I think there's at least a dozen people in this room who've spoken or expressed opinions that will be feeding into that consultation. And I hope we all go back to our wards and discuss this matter with residents and urge them to fill in the consultation as well, and we can overwhelm it and make sure that the views of the vast majority of Exeter residents who will be against these proposals are fed into the process. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll make sure I don't miss anybody this time, Councillor. Sorry for that. Before Emma comes in, George, that question that Councillor Wright asked.
Thank you. So there is a duty to cooperate between councils when preparing local plans and other planning policy, and that has framed discussions over a long period of time, and those discussions are ongoing, and some of the issues are flagged within the statement of common ground, which sets out actually where there are some agreements, but where there are some outstanding issues for resolution. Those discussions are part of an ongoing process, but they have resulted in feeding in commentary relating to the policy drafting within the plan. Those discussions have resulted in a bolstering of the evidence which teams have been doing, looking at their landscape work and also looking at some joint strategic transport evidence to support the wider plan making across the area. So those due to cooperate discussions are still valuable, even if they haven't resolved every issue associated with the plan. And as I said, those discussions will continue. It's also worth pointing out that there is a duty to cooperate, but it's not a duty to agree. And so it's perfectly reasonable for councils to have differing viewpoints, and that can be debated through consultation and further evidence, ongoing drafting, and at the end of the day, an examination. So these discussions are ongoing as per that cooperative spirit, and we'll see how that takes us as we move on.
Thank you, George. Councillor Morse.
Firstly, thank you everyone for your representations, which will be considered as part of our response as we move forward. I think it's probably been made very clear that Exeter is really convenient for those local authorities on our boundaries to develop on the side of. It makes their development sustainable. However, this does not remain sustainable for us as a city, and it will impact on our principles of protecting the green hills around Exeter. The local authorities, in this case Teambridge, benefit from any SIL 106 and council tax, and Exeter tends to then support the leisure and travel and work principles of those people that live there. So I don't like to talk about the guests, but not everything from the guest has been lost. Some of it is being used in our local plan as we move forward. There have been conversations, but the guests failed for a reason. And I imagine it's because we couldn't always agree on boundaries of sites and how we share out the pain. So I will be happily writing this letter with George, or George will be writing it. I imagine I'll be making sure he sends it off and it's all been approved. But I think excellent points have been made by everybody, and while I appreciate the need to meet housing targets, if you are going to put them on the side of another local authority, you should probably have a bit more of a conversation about how you can assist them with the impacts moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move the recommendation from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. I'll move on to item 9, and it's to nominate the Lord Mayor-elect and the Deputy Lord Mayor-elect. And from the chair, I would like to move Councillor Kevin Mitchell to the position of Lord Mayor-elect, and also Councillor Tess Reid to the position of Deputy Lord Mayor-elect. Kevin, would you like to say anything? Get it in now while you can be political.
I don't intend to be political leader. Thank you very much for the nomination. This is going to be a great honour for myself personally. As everyone knows, I was born in this city, so it's my home. I'm very proud of the city of Exeter. So it'll be quite an emotional night when I do become the Lord Mayor. And I can promise you all that I will serve as Lord Mayor with dignity, and also it's amazing actually that it's going to be the 75th anniversary of the NHS being founded during my year as well. So as a nurse, I can assure you I'll ensure that the excellent work that occurs within the NHS will be very much part of the mayoral year. So thank you very much for the nomination.
Thank you, Kevin, and we all know you'll do very well and well deserved, and you and Tess Reid will do a good job on behalf of the city, and best of luck to you both. And we look forward to it. So I'm going to move that from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That carries with recommendation.
So our next meeting is the 4th of April, and so good night and thank you very much. 6:19.